Thanks for tuning in to the Loser Kid Pinball Podcast. We are on episode 105. I am Josh Sharpe. With me, my co-host, as always,
Scott Larson.
And Scott, there has been nuts. So many reveals.
Yeah.
So many releases.
Yeah.
If you're going to be buying Pulp Fiction, that seems like the hotness right now. Where are you going to be getting yours from?
You know, I would call Zach and Nicola flipping out pinball, and I would definitely see if I can get the Bad Mother Flipper edition, because my gosh, that's amazing.
Amazing. And that topper is great. And, speaking of the Bad Mother Flipper, we've got two Bad Mother Flippers with us today. We've got Josh Sharpe, which everyone knows, the Overlord, the King, whatever you want to call him.
He did the called shot, right?
Yes, something like that. And then we have a very special guest, a man that has been in the industry for 30 plus years with amazing titles like Indiana Jones Pinball Adventure, Fishtails, Taxi, and it's done numerous call-outs. We have Mark Ritchie with us. How you doing, Mark?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great. And how are you doing, Josh?
Fantastic, boys.
Better now that your computer's working?
Yeah. We're going to pretend like this wasn't supposed to start 20 minutes ago.
Oh, my goodness. Well, hey, I'm glad we're all here. I'm glad we were able to figure out the technical difficulties and get this underway. But, Mark, this is amazing. The last game you worked on, besides for Capcom with Kingpin, was Indiana Jones Pinball Adventure. So what brought you back into the realm of pinball?
These guys here at Raw Thrills, believe it or not. I had all but kind of given up on the thought of getting back into it, not wanting to go back to work for Stern or any of the big companies. That prospect just would love to design, but not under that roof. I don't know if that's, I could have done that a couple of times, but passed on it. And I'm super glad I did, because I feel like this is the best group I could have possibly ever been blessed to work with.
Definitely.
So, I'm a lucky guy.
Well, in my understanding, it sounds like there's a lot of the old school Bally Williams guys still there with Raw Thrills and with Play Mechanics and stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a few of us. George and I go back. George Petro, president of Play Mechanics and pinball programmer.
Nice.
Who, I was pretty skeptical when we started this for that reason, because George is the president here and he's got lots of other stuff to do. And it's really been, I don't know how to put it, I guess a surrealistic kind of ride. It's been a while. Obviously, we've been on this thing for 5 years. So take that in consideration with the timing. I mean, we primarily make arcade games, so pinball was kind of a journey for us. So even though we knew how to do it, there were all kinds of new hurdles, and just it was a ride.
Well, so that brings up, yes, you're a company that is involved in all sorts of entertainment, home entertainment, and you're known for the remakes. The remakes have been, or at least Chicago Game Company is known for the remakes and being able to make these classic games. However, this is really branching into an original title that they're helping out with, and so it's a partnership. So tell me about how that came about.
Interesting story. I had reached out to Doug to try to acquire a few parts, basic things, flippers, bumpers. We had, at that point, decided we were going to go ahead and start making a whitewood, creating the game. This is down the track. I mean, the story starts earlier than that. But regarding Doug and Chicago Gaming, I actually just went over there one day and said, "Hey, can I get some stuff from you?" And in fact, I have the receipt somewhere here for the bill. For the cabinet and for all the basic stuff you needed, to get a game fired up. And it's kind of funny. Doug he sniffed something, and eventually he says, "I think I know what you guys are working on. I got a pretty good idea. I know what it is." And that's a George story. I was not privy to that, but George told me about it. So yeah, he figured out what we were doing and got interested. And all of a sudden we started getting more support from Doug, a little bit more support. Pretty soon we had a hardware system. Pretty soon we had, everything. And, it was a process, but I certainly never said, "Hey, Doug, want to make a game with us?" It didn't happen that way. He sort of got involved on his own through George. And before I knew it, Eugene and George had a talk with him, and we had a partnership. So I wasn't really involved in it directly, So, but that's what I know about it.
Well, Pulp Fiction is an iconic movie that is really genre changing. You could definitely say that Hollywood tilted a little bit when Pulp Fiction came out, but it's also 30 years old. So, how did the process of deciding to make a Pulp Fiction game, or at least knowing the Pulp Fiction license was up for a game, how did that happen?
Josh, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe this project started out as a video game.
Yeah, I think we went to them for that, and then it's like they pitched us on Quentin wanting to get a pinball machine made, right? And then it was sort of in our court if we I didn't even know about this project back then, but if George and you guys over there in your building wanted to do something, and you guys took it on.
I think Scott and George were talking about a side scroller very similar to, I guess, Narc. I believe that was the original plan for that game. And at some point, I think Eugene said, "Why don't you guys make a pinball?" And that's kind of how we ended up shifting from that to the pinball.
And my understanding too is Quentin the only real direction he wanted was old school, right? He didn't want LCDs. He didn't want all this fancy stuff. And even some like getting a hold of him was old school. You had to send papers in the mail.
Telegraph.
Oh my gosh.
Pony Express.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a long process. So many times. I mean, it would have been okay if it happened once, but it happened like multiple times. And where we were just sitting, okay, what's the next step? We've sent we've sent stuff in for approval. Wait. 6 weeks later, oh yeah, okay, fine, go ahead. Early on, it was that way, and it's that way now. Regarding approvals and things like that, they're just really slow to react. I'm not sure why. Maybe the Weinstein thing had something to do with that early on because that was going on. So, Hollywood's a different world, man. Different world.
Definitely.
They definitely dance to their own music, and I can't play that song ever. But, kind of an interesting side story here. I had submitted, our first crack was a wide body. So I had way more in the game originally. And he basically just peed all over it. And said, I don't want that. Get that out of here. Way too much. No ramps, no displays. Here's what I want. And I started getting, emails with pictures of Dolly Parton and Captain Fantastic, Strikes and Spares, all these old Bally games, and it became real clear what he wanted very quickly. So we wanted to make him happy. I mean, he's the guy. He's got to be happy, or we're not going anywhere or doing anything with anybody. So that was kind of the tact we took with it, and from there we made an '80s game.
So he didn't want any ramps or displays. I know that this is traditionally it's a single level, but it has stuff in it that you wouldn't typically see in a single level, like the vertical up kicker that goes to the ball lock behind.
He hasn't noticed it yet. He hasn't noticed.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna say in the subway. I didn't know.
No subway, nothing under there.
Yeah, we hit the cool stuff, but we kept it. We tried to keep it.
It's impressive though, because I think, like it said, I'm going to reference the straight down the middle feature here and there, but it's a great collaboration of, it was a 90s movie, but they're dressed up like they're from the 70s. So there's a lot of mixture of modern, that 90s and 70s. And I feel like that's interpreted it in this game very, very well, of like, you can't really put an error on this game, right?
No.
And so, I don't know, just looking at this, was it difficult trying to make something that was going to appease him, I guess?
Not really, not on my end. I kind of had a good vision of stuff early on, like the briefcase and the characters and things. Those things came really quickly. The pawn shop probably came right after that, and then I started naming the features before I actually had them. So I kind of had a really good idea of having these different paths that didn't know what I was going to do with them, but laid them into the game and thought this can be cool at some point. A lot of times games go that way for me. I don't always have a whole idea. I'll have a piece of it, and I'll start with that, and then that's kind of how the playfield evolved. So I think very visually, and I think if I look at a license, I'm looking for artifacts. I'm looking for things that people are going to remember that I can mechanically, make happen in the game. Obviously, everybody does that, I'm sure, but the briefcase was automatic. Originally, I wanted to have the balls actually load into the case. So as the case rotated, the original plan was that the balls would drop out of the bottom of it. But that became a very quickly a mechanical nightmare. So we abandoned that. So I think what we ended up with was much better, much more reliable. So you have to think about reliability. You can't throw a bunch of crap in a game and expect it to work, with a horrible design behind it. So
yeah.
It's a process,
So walk through the cabinet, because the cabinet, this is where you guys nailed that vintage effect, is because the cabinet doesn't look like a modern cabinet. It doesn't feel like a modern cabinet. Even in the backlash, does that lift off or does that fold down?
It folds, and it can also be detached from the cabinet. Okay. But it actually has hinges directly above the speaker port.
Okay.
Kind of like the old days where you remember we had hinges on the necks of games.
Yeah.
Bally did it. I know Bally did it. And you could just fold the back box down. But yes, it's modern as far as that goes. But the cabinet, I guess you're alluding to the coin door and some of the things that are
just everything. Everything looks non-modern. Even the cabinet says this is not a modern game.
Like, right. Is it like a two-tone paint too, like the old school?
Yeah. Almost looks like there's a simulated overspray.
We purposely designed the cabinet to look like it had been, like it was a stenciled cabinet from the era. Because in the old days, they would run 2 or 3 stencils to do the designs on the outside of the cabinets. No decals. This is way before decals. So we basically mimicked that look for that. That was Scott's deal. He did a great job with that, because I have people going, "Hey, man, did you guys stencil this?"
Yeah, I got the same
stuff, and it's like, wow. We look at it every day. So when you see people saying stuff like that, it's awesome. I mean, that's exactly the effect we wanted. The coin door actually came out a little bit later when we started going down the retro road. We're like, hey, let's go all the way. We can't put a half coin door on this thing and expect it to look like a game out of the 80s or 90s. So that came from George would push that pretty hard. He was on that program. And then the integrated start button, we took basically right off a Bally machine, So a lot of it was inspired, again, by just the general look of games from that era.
And it definitely hits the mark. I think the other thing, too, is it's impressive looking at what price point this came in at and how custom this is. I mean, this is just not a cookie cutter off the line. And you guys are obviously hit an amazing mark, because it sounds like everywhere I'm talking to, the LE is sold out, unless if you might have to dig in some corners right now, but it seems like all the major distributors have sold their Bad Mother flippers. So, comes with that amazing topper. You got to tell me about that topper. Who came up with that, and how did it come about?
I was a couple of people. It's mostly me. I had the vision in the beginning, and then Scott got involved with me on that pretty early, and we shot it over to Doug and said, "Hey, here's the idea." And Doug went, it's hard to, Doug went nuts with that thing. He went and he did it right. And he took an idea and basically ran with it, did all the engineering, did all of the, all of the trials with the motors and everything he went through to get that thing to where it is today. It was just, I could write a book about that, But Doug is a passionate dude, man. He was a huge part of this thing. I think we couldn't have pulled this off without him. There's no way.
We certainly couldn't have pulled off a game that looks like this without the stuff that the CGC side was able to bring to the table was equally important to the game itself, was the package. And they were instrumental in pulling that through to the finish.
But, he would call me on Sunday evenings and go, hey, what do you think about this? I'm going to try this movement. I'm going to try these bearings. I'm like, yeah, great. Cool. When can we see it? It was a lot of when can we see it, but it was worth it. He does things in a way that he has quality in his mind before he does anything.
Yes.
That's a huge thing.
Yep.
Even if it takes him longer, I think in the end, it's completely worth it.
I agree.
It's that three-legged stool of good, fast, cheap. And Doug does good, and he does cheap. So It's not fast. And I couldn't think of two out of the two out of those three things I would pick would be the two that Doug picks.
Yeah.
Not to say it's not frustrating to deal with the fast side, but and I've talked with Mark about this over the years of this thing being developed, but the game is going to live for 10, 20, 30, 40 years out there, and all of the trials and tribulations of getting to this point and having a game that is of this quality and looks like this will be worth it for long after Mark and I are gone.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to fit really well with, I would say, a lot of people's game rooms where they're trying to have something that's a little more of, I guess for adults, not a kid's game room. There's no bounce house in the where you're putting this. But how was that zoning in on that? I mean, it's a very R-rated title, and trying to find, okay, here's the market for it. Were you concerned that, hey, there's a lot of stuff in here that would not go into some families' homes?
Absolutely. Which is why we have a version of audio that bleeps basically every square in the game.
Except for Josh's house, apparently.
Well, yeah, that was early.
Work in progress. Work in progress.
We actually had it happen again last week, but I won't talk about it. I found another one. Not as bad, though. But, absolutely, I think about stuff like that. Brings to mind a story, a guy years ago when I had finished Fishtails, a guy from the South. I got a phone call. At that time, we had a woman that handled all the incoming calls. She was a receptionist, and she's paging me. There's a man on the phone to talk to you. He's from Georgia. And I'm like, okay. So I get on the phone with this guy, and he's going, hey, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of offended with the accents that you guys put on that game on a couple of them characters. And I don't know. I was flabbergasted when I heard that. It kind of left a mark on me, like, I guess, kind of after that. And I just ended up telling the guy, hey, I don't know how I said this, but I go, hey, we pick on everyone equally. I haven't gotten a call from the guy in Wisconsin yet, so. Anyway, it's a crazy side story. But yeah,
that's great.
It does make me nervous. I mean, I think some people are going to pass on it, possibly for that reason. I mean, that is a risk. There's no question.
It's not even the swearing that concerns me. It's you've got the GIMP as the drop targets. I mean.
My kids think that's just a Halloween costume.
It is a Halloween costume.
Not a big deal.
Right. Yeah.
What, Josh? You don't have one of those outfits?
No, I do not.
You sure?
Maybe that's why they think it is a Halloween costume at the Sharpe home.
Right.
Yeah, it's Josh's house. Yeah.
I don't even think Pulp Fiction's the worst game in my basement. I'm definitely not. There's no Dad of the Year awards in my house.
Yeah.
You somehow ended up with the Zingy Bingy prototype in your house.
That's the only thing I'm missing.
Yeah. Okay, so Mark, walk us through the game. So I step up to it. What am I going to do?
I'm going to let Josh take that. Josh, rules master. I play it a certain way, and Josh has alluded to this already. You can play that game any way you want. The features are not dependent on one another per se, so you can have fun with one of those features endlessly. I can tell you what I would do, okay? I'll walk through it my style.
Okay.
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to spot the skill shot in the center hole up on top of the center saucer. Blue arrow in the center, max points, right? Spot a character at that point. Ball kicks out. Now I'm in the bumpers. Now while I'm in the bumpers, I'm going to try to get Big Kahuna lit. First thing, because that is a playfield multiplier. When I get both of those targets lit, I can now shoot the magnet on the lower right side and jack my playfield multiplier, which I'm going to want to do right away. After that, I'm going to start shooting for multi-ball, either in the pawn shop immediately or the briefcase, which is 3 drop targets down. Both are 3 drop targets down, although I think briefcase might be a little bit tougher only because of the distance. But I think in any case, when I play that game, I get multi-ball no less than 5 times in one play. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go for all the bonus points and payoffs I can. I mean, it's really that simple, and you can do that either with the briefcase or the pawn shop. I'm sure Josh has a way different strategy because he kicks my ass every time we play it. So.
Not really. I mean, I think, to your point, what you touched on first, the kahuna bonus is obviously a really big deal. So
yeah,
I will usually, work towards those multi-balls, but then not start them until I can get my multiplier up.
Yep.
And outside of that, it's sort of, the game falls into the, like the mode shot, for example, on the right is also the collect a character shot. So if I don't hit the saucer on the top, it means my target is still up. So that kind of opens up the single ball modes for me. So it's sort of like, it's situational where, I missed the top. So it's like, all right, I'm going to go after this target because the single ball scoring modes have the potential to score even greater than any of the multi-balls if you get a hold of it. And then you can collect those points again at the end of those modes. So it really is, it's I haven't been bashful about being a fan of Lyman and his work and the risk reward that he's put in his games, certainly in the tail end of his career. But it's definitely built to be that, where anywhere you want to go, if you execute, your points will come. And if you don't, you should be close to something else that you are advancing as you do things. I do think, it's cool for me. This game seems older than Fishtails and Indy Jones, but we somehow have both of those multi-balls in this game. We sort of have that front Indy Jones multi-ball, which, Indy's lacking the Fishtails deeper lock shot. And, this game has both. So, to have 2 different 3-ball locking mechanisms on a retro vintage game is really cool. We can lock 4 balls before we have to start kicking them out and stuff. So it's pretty cool. And then just, I've always believed that, the Williams games were always that perfect level of charm, difficult, stuff that I've talked about forever. And the one thing that those games always lacked were, these mini wizard modes that have developed over the last 20 years that those 90s games didn't have. They had Eternal Life. By the time you got to Indy Jones, they had Lost in the Zone, they had Tour the Mansion, but there weren't these midway points that were explored to like the level of depth that modern games do have now, and our game has that. So, if this game did come out 30 years ago, a lot of the game would have been the same, but it would have been missing that depth that we have for, it has a taxi rule regarding the characters that are like picking up your passengers in Taxi. But then there's a wizard mode at the end of that, versus in Taxi, you get your jackpot, you're back to your game. So I think sort of just paying attention to, and I think I mentioned it in the Zach video, but like, we are not selling a game to that audience of 30 years ago, right? Like, we are selling this game to a modern audience. So it was important for me on the rules side to have modern rules in a game that are equivalent to other machines, just hopefully less confusing if we did it right, which I think we did, because we had to, because we couldn't rely on an else. I do feel, the tail end of the DMD era into the LCD era, it really serves as a crutch to be able to. There's nothing worse, and I've joked about this with Lyman over the past, but when you reach the LCD era, it's like, oh well, we can do whatever we want, because then we can just throw some stuff up on the screen and people will figure it out. And the real trick and the really hard part, and Lord knows I set Mark hundreds of bad rule suggestions before we landed on stuff that was far too confusing. And we always had to harken back to like, how do we explain this knowing that we have alphanumeric displays and inserts and sound and speech? And at some point you go from like, oh damn, I wish we could do this, to sort of embracing the limitations that the system has, because it makes you put on your problem solving hat. And it's like, I have this cool rule idea. Can we make this work with the limitations we have? And having some RGB inserts allowed us to create some depth of rules, because you now know you had a chance to do something more than one time. You could do it at different color levels that would raise the value through the story that you're telling. So I think we tried to exploit that as much as we could to make the gameplay as modern as possible. Man, that was really long-winded. I feel like my dad's kid.
That's it. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. That's what we said.
Therapy in an hour.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Okay, so rule sets. You obviously take some rule sets as an inspiration piece for any game, right? And so, what are the games that you drew inspiration from in creating this rule set?
For this, it was really, a lot of it was paying homage to Mark. I think seeing, and by the time I was involved, like, it was already this single level game. So, the first image I got from Mark had sort of the 5 characters in the center. So, I immediately started focusing on the taxi rule and collecting characters, and then just trying to find a way to extend, how do we make this a modern rule version of a classic rule? So it was a lot of that. There's other modes, like the one of the mini wizard modes, the shot, is there's one shot lit on the playfield, and you can hit it as many times as you want, which kind of calls back to the super jackpot stage for Indiana Jones and Fishtails, where you've made it to this event and you can just start going to town, and it's a really special moment. So, a lot of stuff from Mark's previous games, and just a lot of stuff like really base. I'm not a huge fan of colored arrow modes in terms of that being what distinguishes one mode from another. So, trying to highlight different areas of the play field. I'm a huge Larry DeMar, to me, is like the GOAT of really transitioning from classic to modern. Modern pinball would not be what it is today without Larry. And, one of my favorite games that he did was World Cup Soccer. So, the ultra modes that he has on those games that suddenly increase the scoring for very common pinball items like jet bumpers and spinners, and in that game ramps and the goalie and whatever. Tying that into, the roll scene modes are pretty much a version of that, where it's not just super jets, but you're actually dancing out the scene to through that mode, through the jets, which is where the dance floor is on the game. So trying to stick to the story, trying to do things that players, after playing a couple times, will identify that, this mode is the jet bumper mode, and this mode focuses on the spinners. And then having that risk reward for the tournament players built in to be able to execute and get a good payoff.
Is there any other? You talked a little about Easter eggs with previous games. I know, like in Indiana Jones, you can get to the Fish of Tails or to the WB Frog if you go the right cart path. Is there anything like that in this game as well?
I think I don't think we score anything, but there's definitely a special call out if you get you cheat Dr. Jones style ball into the pawn shop while the pawn shop is locked.
Nice.
Outside of that, I don't think we went to, every decision we made really tried to to focus on the vibe that we were explicitly trying to go for with the game. That like things like that are cute, but it kind of just didn't fit within this game.
Yeah.
So not really. I know that like one of the rules, the drive fast rule, has you building up the speed of your car faster and faster. And there is an Easter egg that the miles per hour you have to hit to light your extra ball is 146 miles an hour, which is from High Speed's Backlash, which is how fast Steve was going during his adventures.
Yeah. So what made you guys land on the 5 characters? The Samuel Jackson, John Travolta, Uma Thurman, Quentin Tarantino, and Mr. Wolf. I can't remember his name, but I mean, Bruce Willis is a pretty big part of the story. Well, why wasn't he one of the modes versus Quentin's? Obviously, it's his game. It sounds like he wanted this made, so I don't blame you for putting him there. But just unique that you picked Quentin's character in Mr. Wolf versus made the other 2.
Well, originally we had Jules, we had Vincent, we had Butch, we had Marcellus, we had Mia, and we had Mr. Wolf originally. When we submitted for approval, we were asked to remove both Butch and Marcellus, which was also equally devastating because, yeah, I agree. I mean, the question is, why is Quentin on the playfield? Well, it's a licensing thing, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay. Yeah, easy enough.
That's what they wanted, and that's what we gave them because we believed in this game, and we believed that the theme would carry it pretty far, and that if they wanted that, okay, so we had fun with Quentin in the game anyway. Yeah. I think it turned out great. I mean, I don't hate it anymore. I wasn't all about it in the beginning, but you evolve, you adjust, and you keep going.
And then also originally the Backlash was supposed to be the iconic Pulp Fiction poster, but then Quentin had kind of pushed against back that it was it originally going to be like realistic art, or was it always this kind of comic book style art that you guys have?
That we never got that far with it, but I think we were kind of going to do. I don't think we would have done the comic book thing if we hadn't been directed to do so. I think Scott had a different plan for it. I don't recall exactly if we had carved a style in or anything, because what we were giving them were just concept sketches basically at the time. So we weren't really hardline on how the art was going to look at that point. We basically got most of that direction from QT himself. So, like the whole comment about, yeah, you guys got to do hand-drawn art. And by the way, if you don't have an artist, I have a guy. And Scott heard that. And he's like, no, we have a guy. So it kind of evolved into that. Originally, I'm looking at old stuff right now, and a lot of it is photorealistic, but it's concept art. So there's nothing really finished that you could make a clear decision on what the direction was at that time.
Gotcha.
We were kind of floating, is this going to work? Is that going to work? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? I mean, it was back and forth, a lot of back and forth with George and I and Scott at first on how the thing should look. So we sort of, I don't know, it's hard to say, a lot of paste up stuff, and the concept sketches, and just to sort of try to get a direction, because I would say we really didn't have an art direction at that point.
What was the most surprising thing that happened in the game that turned out way better than you thought?
For sure, the magnet shot. When George got a hold of that thing and got his programming fingers on it and had it throwing the ball all over the playfield, it'll grab the ball and then it'll whip it. You don't know where it's going to go. Sometimes it finishes shots for you. Sometimes it'll lock the ball. Sometimes it'll go up straight up the spinner lane. I mean, that was probably the biggest surprise, cool moment for me. But I think also when I saw the briefcase work for the first time, that was pretty exciting. So those two things, I think, were probably the biggest. What should I say? How should I describe that? I'll be nice. Very exciting. How's that?
I gotta say, and I love the briefcase too, and the way that it mimics the movie, right? Like no one knows no one knows what's in the briefcase.
Who's in the briefcase? That's a wizard.
Yeah. There's a theory out there. It's supposedly the diamonds from Reservoir Dogs that Mr. Pink got away with the diamonds.
I've heard the Marcellus's soul is in there, which explains the Band-Aid at the back of his neck.
Okay.
You heard that one?
I haven't.
That's the one that I've heard.
His soul was stolen, the Band-Aid was put on, and the soul ended up in the briefcase.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's a good one, too.
As good as anything, right?
Yeah. As much as you can speculate, that's as good as it's going to get. So, did you enjoy this process? I mean, you've been out of pinball for almost 20 years now. Was it just like coming back to home? Was it like riding a bike? How was it?
Pretty much. Yeah. I loved it. It was a dream come true for me. I mean, I kind of washed my hands of pinball. Thought, well, maybe I'll do it again sometime on my own time. I didn't think these guys would ever do this. It came as a complete surprise. And, I think somebody asked me like, I don't know who it was, but, how did you convince them to make that game? And I go, they convinced me. I didn't, it was the other way around. George hit me up. Hey, you want to do a pinball? I went, no. I mean, yeah, sure. I never said no. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's awesome to be doing this again. It's something I know how to do. So.
And then I guess the other question is, if you can talk about it or whatnot, what made you exit pinball? Because originally you were working for Williams. I don't know if I've ever heard the story of you going from Williams to Capcom and then kind of exiting.
What is the question?
your Williams exit to Capcom, Mark. Tell us all about how that went down.
Oh, that was fun. I majorly pissed off Neil Nicastro. He talks about it. What's that? What is that video, Josh?
Which one?
He rants about it on the video at the end.
Oh, is it the Pinball 2000 documentary or no?
No. God, I can't remember now. It was that one dude that did like a whole history on video games.
It's the Insert Coin documentary?
That's it. Yeah, Neil just goes off on a rampage about some dude who ripped him off, stole stuff, and he went after him, nailed him in court. I was that guy.
Wow.
Nice.
But I didn't get nailed in court. None of that happened. He harassed us endlessly. But we made games, and the reason I left Williams was basically that guy. I never liked him. I just had a hard time. My thought was, why should I be putting money in this guy's pocket? He's already got enough. He doesn't like anything I do. I mean, I made the greatest game of my career. And he was very like, no big deal,
Yeah.
And I guess I was just really pissed off, and I left there and I thought, the heck with this. Next thing that comes along, I'm gone. Well, something came along very, very quickly after that. So.
And then how was Capcom? Like, was it enjoyable when it went? I can't remember if didn't they claim bankruptcy?
Run. Yeah, not many.
It was very pressuresome. It was like stepping out of the frying pan into the kettle in a lot of ways, because we had nothing. We basically built that place up from scratch. They had absolutely nothing. And we had a couple of sharp people there that were able to put stuff together relatively quickly, a hardware system. And that's always a huge battle. So that was our first step. We got that done, I think, in year one. At the end of the year, we had something that was playable. And I think the first thing we did was we tested the hardware on a redemption game, because none of us could make pinball according to our agreements with Williams Electronics. So you had to wait a year before you could actually engage in the design of a competitive product, right?
Yeah.
So we were all working on redemption games, which wasn't a pinball machine, so it wasn't competitive, And basically, that's where we tested the pinball hardware. And from there, we, things matured and moved on, and we were able to start making games. And I had other guys in there. Greg Kamek was there, Brian Hansen, Python, of course, that was a complete crazy. That's a whole story. I could for another time, because it's too long.
So how did you narrow down which moments of the game you're going to focus on? Because I mean, you have the Royale with cheese on there, and you have the pawn shop, and you obviously have the dance scene. what made you select which scenes?
I guess what I watched the movie like 20 or 30 times, I think, before I started getting into this. And I grabbed things that stuck out at me and were like, iconic moments that people are never going to forget. And when you see them on the game, you know exactly what that is. And so I guess I looked for the things that pop out, Royale with cheese was one of them, the briefcase, all of these things. The gun was my idea. That was just because these guys are carrying these chrome 45 pistols, pretty cool. So that was, I call it loose theming, I guess. You're very loose with a theme like this because there's so much stuff. This one was really easy because so many great moments. I mean, there are things that we didn't do that I kind of wish we had, but we just didn't have the space for it, or it didn't fit, So like the scene in the diner at the end, I would have liked to have done a little bit more with that. We do allude to it within the modes, but there's other things that are bigger than that, and I guess I have a scale that just says, hey, where's the most memorable moment here? Where's the most memorable audio? More importantly, in that movie, it was more about the audio. Where can I put that stuff, and how can I make it make sense in the game?
I think that's part of the problem solving too, where it's like you want to do 5 great things instead of 12 good things, and that does like I think we have 5 modes. Like we could have had 15 modes in this thing, but it just comes down to picking what works for the game, kind of just always going back to what's best for the game.
So on Fishtails and on Indiana Jones, you have like an auto plunger feature with the fishing rod, and on Indiana Jones, it's the gun. Was there ever a gun considered on Pulp Fiction, or was it always you wanted just the plunge for the skill shot?
There was a gun considered. In fact, I have
the first proto was a launch button, right? That you guys built up over there.
Well, there was a pistol too. I mean, we had a 45 pistol at one point, very early. But yeah, we thought about it, and then of course that was not going to fit the retro image. Was not going to fit in with everything else. We do have an auto fire mode built into the game though. So
you're telling me if there's a modder out there that wants to mod a 45 to the game, they could probably get away with it.
I think so. Right, Josh?
They'd have to turn flipper launch on.
Right now, you can, if the setting is set that way, you can press the flipper button to fire the ball.
Okay.
So
possible.
Factory setting, though, I believe default is off. Is that right, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what, honestly, I was showing my son. He's like, why didn't they put a gun as the plunger? I'm like, well, but I figured it was something like that. But
So I like that on the watch you put Ritchie as the manufacturer.
Well, I didn't do that. That was Doug. But yeah, it's cool.
You're now part of Pulp Fiction. How does that make you feel?
I guess there is an Easter egg, Mark. So we have a director that for now is still Mr. Ritchie, but in the role in the roll scene modes, it goes a little fourth wall where we're actually like we're introducing these as movie scenes rather than being in the world, and Mark is the voice of the director as you make progress during that.
Right.
I don't know if we asked Josh, but how did you get roped into all this?
Oh man, I just kept showing up until they stopped me showing up.
Bad habit.
They haven't stopped me. I think, Eugene randomly talked with me about this thing, and I had no idea what was going on. And I'm just sitting there, just like my chin is on the ground, and it's like, how have these guys not let me know what they're doing? What the heck? And call Mark, and it's like, hey, Eugene just told me. And Mark, caught me up to speed, and it was like, yeah, it's kind of how I've been with pinball my whole life, especially with Stern over the last 30 years, 20 years. Like I am Mr. Unsolicited Comments. So, Mark sends me what he's doing, and immediately it's just like, this would be fun. This would be fun. Shower thought this morning. This would be fun. And it's just, I'm sure at some point, like Lonnie has emailed me to please stop emailing him, the game's done, or bugging Dwight, or, bugging Lyman back in the day. But I just kept bugging Mark, and he was gracious enough to not ignore me. And I think also, and what's so great about the collaboration of this team, I think, it takes a lot of courage for not for me, because I don't care, but for people in my position. It takes courage to present ideas to these icons of the industry, and hoping that they're not terrible. I'm fine if they're terrible, but I think, it's a big part to have, the graciousness and acceptance of the people on the other end to, also be trusting enough. Like, Mark can tell me that an idea isn't good, and he knows, and there's other people that I'm sure Mark couldn't tell someone that, it's like, man, how do I tell someone that this is not good? And it's like, the openness of the team to be able to know that, like, he's not calling me a bad person. He's just explaining why something isn't going to work. And, I was not kidding where, 100 rule suggestions go in, and it leads to the one best answer. And it really does take, we're fortunate that we had the time to get there, but none of this was like bing, bang, boom, we got a game, we're done. Like, this all is easy. It's a lot of just, here's something, George puts it in the game, Mark's playing it, it's not working here. Like, all right, try this. What about this? That doesn't make sense. A lot of just, that collaborative team nature to get things to as fun as we can. And I don't think that, and I mean, I know I've been on teams where that nurturing environment of the team just doesn't exist, and it becomes a lot harder. So I'm really fortunate that everyone on the team and on the CGC side, everyone is listening, isn't afraid to listen, isn't afraid to be wrong, and is afraid to and isn't afraid to support someone else who's right.
When are these games going to be available to buy?
That's a great question. Mark and I are asking that ourselves.
We are diligently wanting to answer that question as soon as possible, of course. I'm going to guess the SCs are going to roll first. Is that right?
I don't even know. That sounds right.
Yeah. So
that's the bill of materials that Doug's finalizing first.
Given that, it would be preemptive for me to say anything about that right now.
Okay.
So
I think the only thing Ryan White included third, he expected it to ship third quarter of this year. So yeah. I will say between July 1st and September 30th, or else Ryan's a liar.
That's probably a safe bet. Yeah. Okay. Hey, I wanted to add to what Josh was saying earlier regarding his input and stuff. Me being out of the business some 27 years, Josh alludes to it in another way too, which is, today's rules need to be for today's player. I'm not today's designer. So when Josh knocked on my door, that door flew open. I'm like, yeah, come on. Because he knows the rules. He knows what's hot. Let's face it, I've been out of it a long time. And so I really trusted his judgment on a lot of this stuff. And I'm glad I did, because the game plays really good. I'm really happy with it, And I don't think that I would have come up with anything like that, certainly on my own. So he was a welcome partner. Day one.
So is this mostly a play mechanics game, or is this like a collaboration between you guys and CGC? Is CGC just manufacturing for you guys? Like, I guess, yeah.
Where's the overlap? Where's the Venn diagram?
CGC is the manufacturer. That was all developed here. Josh and I and George, for the most part, and Scott, the four of us. We were working on this thing over the COVID months where everybody was closed up. We're in George's basement. We moved the game to his basement, and we worked there, and we just kept at it,
We had play nights every Wednesday night for a year and a half.
Right on. Yeah.
Some of the best nights, and my teenage self was just eating this up. You guys have no idea how excited I have been through this whole process, just as a fan.
It was fun.
Was it hard for you too, Josh, juggling, because you've been doing the Cactus Canyon continued code, you're doing the Pulp Fiction code, and you still have your normal day job of CFO over Raw Thrills.
I love this stuff, Josh. It's stuff I think about in the shower. It's stuff I think about, when I'm driving home from work. This is just it. I just got to do it with a group of people that I work with every day. But it's, if I'm go in and play Ghostbusters and hang out with Dwight, the next few weeks is probably spent with me thinking about Ghostbusters in the car and messaging Dwight stupid ideas that he can ignore or make fun of me for. So it really is, something that, I have a notebook at home filled with, really bad layouts, and now looking back on it, really bad rules, but it's a hobby for me. And so for me, it's stuff I'd be doing for fun in my mind anyway, my doodling fake rules for fake games that don't exist. And I think sort of, Mark alluded to it earlier, but, I feel like where we really benefited was like Doug Duba's hobby at night is to just, he's not a mechanical engineer, but he likes to build and tinker and do things. And it's the stuff that he would do after hours anyway, and just for fun. And, he was able to apply the stuff he likes to do for fun on this project. I always feel bad because I joke with Mark and with George that like those are the guys that have to do the work. This is not work for me. This is just like camp. It is playtime, and I'm fortunate that I can throw some stuff that has some value at it. But like, believe me, it's all just doing it is exciting enough for me.
So this is a new direction. Do we have other games that are being developed?
I would say that our core business is going to remain arcade games.
Yep.
Sure.
I can tell you about a couple of really cool titles coming up on that side of things.
That's right.
But I guess the ultimate question is the door's probably not closed if there was another project to come along, right?
I think if there are if an opportunity presents itself that lines up, if that's in Redemption, if that's in VR, if that's in Pinball, we'd be stupid to not look at it and evaluate it from a business decision.
Sounds good.
Nothing yet, but you never know, boys.
Mm-hmm.
Never know. Well, so, you're always competitive. I'm just saying, you're trying to take down Stern now and show up your brother Sharpe. Brother Zach.
I saw he updated his resume on LinkedIn yesterday, so it's going to be tough going for those guys over there.
Did he say Josh's younger brother or Josh's superior brother?
That's right. Actually, we purchased our contract manufacturer Partech, who they build a lot of Stern's harnesses for their games. So it's in our best interest for Stern to be the healthiest they've ever been. And based on the president at Partech, I get his books at the end of every month. The Stern business is doing great. So we wish those guys nothing but the best.
Yep.
Because we stand to benefit from their
pinball's good pinball, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Well, and they're definitely doing good and moving to a new facility. Man, that Foo Fighters just came out, looks great, but we won't we're on Play Mechanics time. We're not on Stern time. So
it's a small industry. We all support each other.
Exactly.
So is this going to be at TPF? Are people going to be able to play it?
That's the plan.
That's the plan.
Even if Mark has to throw it in the back of his truck and drive it all the way down there, right?
I think Doug is putting it on the back of his truck.
Yeah, it won't be.
I think that's the current.
Yeah.
Doug is volunteering.
Is he bringing the topper? Because that topper is a showstopper. Like what Chicago Game Company has done with toppers, like it makes all other toppers look pitiful compared to him.
It's pretty. Doug's crazy bad.
Yep.
It's like Crocodile Dundee. That's not a topper.
That's a topper.
Yeah.
When are we going to see gameplay of the video? Or of a gameplay video of Pulp Fiction?
We're working on a stream, but it won't happen before TPF. But I would expect in April we'll be working on a live stream, and then trying to get a game shipped out to Carl because we have a very cool challenge.
Oh,
Some
really?
challenges for him to try to tackle in the upcoming
Yeah.
months.
Okay.
So
What's
it'll
some,
be out there. It'll be out there.
what's something about Pulp Fiction that we should have asked you that we didn't?
Or if you have like a crazy story that you can share with us about maybe licensing or something like that with it.
Not that I can recall at the moment. I'll put it
I've
down.
had a couple of kids since the game was started in development. That's probably the craziest thing.
I got 2 new cats. I saw cat.
Oh, I think I don't think he wasn't mentioned, but David Thiel
Oh yeah.
was.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
I
Yeah,
think
we kind of
instrumental
older now.
in we have some licensed songs, but we have a lot of not licensed songs and obviously sound effects and I think he alluded to it in Zach's video, but like there were not clean stem. This was all live boom mic recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no, can I get all of Sam Jackson's speech? Can I get that stem? And they can send all clean speech of one character. So the amount of work he did to process out the noise, and I know we've played with it long enough that it's like you can still you like hear the keys jingling in the background or the wind or whatever. And it's just like the ability for him to process down to actually be able to like hear the speech calls. The game is so much better for it to be able to focus on that fun and humor and the songs he composed that were custom. And it's like, hey, we need a song for this mode that kind of has this kind of vibe, and it's like, here you go, it's amazing. And it's like, thanks Dave.
You definitely have to, on a game like this, the soundtrack and the sounds, they are vital to the experience of this game.
Yeah.
Certainly when you have no video, it really is, Scott.
Yeah.
They become
really is.
major important. Absolutely.
Emphasizes just a little bit more. Like, was that a key jingle there? What was that in the
Exactly.
background?
So
find
the sound effect.
Yeah. Someone record this off their phone?
Lucky for us, Dave is extremely intuitive with, what the right path, what the right thing to do, how to level and balance the sounds, I think also is a huge piece of work that he still works at. I mean, we're still working with him. We're not done. So
yeah,
we're really close, but we're not done.
Well, and there's a lot of, it says like 250 plus call outs. That's insane. You're playing the whole scenes from this movie. Unless you got the bleep version, I guess, then you're cutting out half of it.
There's a lot of laughing.
Yeah, right.
A lot of laughing.
I can't remember exactly what the phrase is, but it's hilarious when they take the body to the cleaners. And he's like, "Do I look like a?" I really hope that's in the game.
It's in the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got it all. We got all the good stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think we missed much. I can't think of anything we missed, Josh. You?
No. I mean, some of the stuff that we missed, is unfortunate. Because we didn't focus on a scene in a mode, there's less of it because we did try to keep the mode stuff all in context. So I mean, I've seen on Pinside, there's a lot of like, oh, the game should have this speech call when you do something like this, and it's like that would be funny, but it doesn't work within the context of the rule construct that we're doing, the story that we're telling.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that is, we pulled out everything we could for the things that we focused on.
Okay.
Josh, haven't you learned that everyone is a designer and a concept artist out there? You just need to accept it for it.
I'm one of them, boys. This time I just got someone to open the door.
Nice.
I get it. I'm one of them. I'm one of them.
So you're telling me if I want a job, I need to start knocking on doors?
Yeah.
Just keep emailing incessantly, unprovoked, and eventually you find someone like Mark who's nice enough to open the door.
And now you're one of us, so you got to stop doing that stuff.
That's right.
We
Please.
don't go there.
So if you have your suggestions for rules, please email them to Josh Sharpe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so you guys are both going to be there at Texas?
I am not.
Okay.
I am not. I'm on spring break with the kids. I will be sneaking. Are the seminars on streaming from Texas? I think they normally do,
I
right?
think they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they will be streamed.
I will be getting yelled at by my wife while I'm watching the team up there do their thing while I'm like not watching.
I'm hoping that they are streamed because Josh and I cannot make it to Texas this year, and it's killing us because this is one of those expos that you want, or the festivals that you want to be to. So
it's weird. It's definitely, you have those days where like, oh, Venus and Mars are passing in the solar system every 370 years. This is like, oh, all the 9 planets or 8, or I don't know if Pluto exists, but they're all like lined up. And the next time that's going to happen is like 40,000 years from now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, hopefully this is a major boost to the pinball industry, and you guys decide to do it every year, and Texas just becomes the hot spot for it then.
There's a 0% chance there's a pinball game from Play Mechanics next year.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
0%.
0%. All right. Well, you guys heard it first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Josh, for coming on. We really appreciate it. If you want to hang out with Mark down at not Pinball Expo, down at Texas Pinball Festival, he will be down there.
And if you want to hang out with Josh, go and knock on his door.
Actually, if you want to hang out with me, find my brother, who most people think is me, and tap his shoulder at TPF. And just call him my name. He'll answer. I answer to Zach. He answers to Josh. It's all good.
And your dad is going to be down there.
My dad will be there with the movie screening.
Actually, on March 17th, I saw it's going to be released on Apple TV. So
2 days from now.
If you haven't seen that, go ahead and pull up Apple TV and watch Roger Sharpe's movie.
I think you'll even be able to buy it via Amazon streaming as well.
Yeah, Google Play, I think too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
awesome.
Because it's funny because my wife, I don't know how your wives are, but my wife isn't so much into pinball as much as I am. And I made her watch the Roger Sharpe movie, and she loved it. And she's already getting our family ready for it to come out. And she wants to do a big family night because she just.
That's awesome.
Oh, cool.
She loved it. I was like, I told you, it was funny because it was one of those standoffish things, right? Like, you're going to make me watch a movie about pinball. I'm like, it's not about, like, it is pinball, but it's not.
It's not. It's about my parents' meeting.
It's not that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the tutorials that I force you to watch. Yeah.
It's like a romantic comedy history, documentary. Mockumentary. Yeah. So, well, cool. If you want to get a hold of us, we are loserkidpinballpodcast@gmail.com. You can get a hold of us on all the socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, now YouTube, all at loserkidpinball. Drop us a line there. It's easiest to get a hold of us on Facebook Messenger, where you hit us directly through LoserKid or Scott or Josh. We got anything else for us, Scott, before we hop off?
Man, go to Texas. Go now.
Do it for us. Let us live vicariously through you.
Mm-hmm. Send us pictures. Not those kind of pictures. Pictures of pinball machines.
Yeah, no more of that, David Dennis. Don't be sending us that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Shut up and sit down.